It's episode 75 of the Improv London podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and this week's guest is Rhiannon Vivian.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
Hooray! That would be awkward if one of us was much more keen than the other.
Yeah. I'm really not excited.
I'm barely tolerating this. Right, you are a member of the Maydays.
Yay!
Yay! Yes, good, isn't it? And you and the Maydays are going up to the Birmingham Improv Festival.
That's right, yes.
This very weekend.
Yes, exactly.
That sounds exciting.
It's really exciting. I haven't been to Birmingham since I was 15. And I think I went to the Clothes Show Festival, which was basically, and that's going to age me because the Clothes Show was on the telly.
I mean, I remember the Clothes Show.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
In the 70s. And yeah, so we went there to that festival and we walked around loads of stalls that sold like hairbands and stuff like that. So that's been my own experience of Birmingham. So I'm so excited to go.
So I just want to delve into this
Yes.
Clothes Show. Was that just a little bit, because you've brought it up now, and I just want to delve into it. So you were particularly fashion conscious?
No.
Oh.
No, I think it was something that me, my sister and my mum just thought it would be fun to do. It was like a tie-in. There was a telly programme, a magazine, and I was just getting into like, I could wear like a shiny skirt or something. Or I could put some glitter on my face, but still massively awkward. And also just thought it was just a nice day out. And I don't think any of us had been to Birmingham. So we were like, brilliant. And then we saw the inside of the enormous exhibition centre and then left again. Yeah, so we didn't really see it.
Yeah, the NEC is actually outside Birmingham.
There we go. I've been just outside Birmingham and I've looked at hairbands. So I'm so happy to see actual Birmingham and do some improv and see the theatre. I'm very excited to see the theatre because I looked it up. I've been looking up all my coordinates so that I know where I need to be. And I love the name of it. It's called the Blue Orange Theatre. It's like a theatre that totally couldn't decide whether it was blue or orange. It was like, I'm both, man.
I only thought of this just now, but is it a reference to films and the colour palette of films? You know, some films just have blue and they emphasise the blue and the orange. The last Mad Max film in particular did that. It was all oranges and blues.
That would make way more sense than someone just not being able to decide.
I've got two favourite colours. One's blue and one's orange. What should we call it? The Orange-Blue Theatre?
Yeah.
Nah.
Other way around. Yeah, that's going to be really ace. And what's also exciting is that it's Halloween weekend and it ties in super well with Happily Never After because our show is gothic and bleak and a bit dark and weird. And there's usually a bunch of deaths. I mean, in a death count per show, I think we've been in the 10s.
Which, considering, there aren't that many Maydays, is a lot of deaths.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So there's lots of characters as ghosts doubling up as other characters. It's quite interesting. It's a very nice form of concept to be able to do a show that is, because obviously it's based on the works of Tim Burton and also the Brothers Grimm and like other kind of dark tales. We wanted to cast the net a bit wider than just Tim Burton, but that was our jumping off point.
And it's a musical.
And it's sort of a musical fairy tale. A dark gothic tale, if you like. So yeah, lots of emphasis on that. And so in celebration of all things sort of slightly bleak and Burton-y, a lot of our characters get killed off. And interestingly and really fun, sometimes the protagonist in like the first scene or two. And then where do you go from there? And what a delight, because you can have a real interesting time with the plot.
So with whom did the concept for Happy Never After originate?
With our MD, Joe Samuel, with our musician. He is brilliant brain, amazing pianist, pitch perfect, all of that. And he just had the idea for it, and I think it fits in with a lot of things that all the Maydays like. Like of all of the shows that we do, everyone definitely has like favourites and ones they prefer more than others. But I think this may be the first one that everybody loves equally. And I think because it's more than just music, there's also narrative, which we haven't done that much before. But again, there's also really lovely points that you can get in like kind of standalone chatty scenes. There's lots you can bring to it and still have it be like, with any luck, a coherent narrative, dark gothic tale by the end of it. So yeah, it's really, really nice to have a show that delights like everybody, and it's totally my jam. I adore it, I really do. Wednesday Addams is my spirit animal. So I'm going to have ace fun at what's essentially a Halloween show.
Brilliant.
On Friday.
So has the show evolved from the original concept? Is there anything you've sort of added or anything you've taken away from the original idea?
I think what's happened is that it's evolved by itself, really. And I think initially we were all kind of looking at ways of being as Burton as possible, kind of looking at tropes and being quite sort of thoughtful about the way that he constructs things, or the way that narrative fairy tales are constructed, and things like the prevalent evil in society and the kind-hearted monster and things like that. And I think the first couple of shows we might have been quite in our heads about that, because when you learn something new, you have to do it in front of an audience in order to get it going. But you know that those first bunch of shows are not going to be, the golden hour of improv.
Which is probably for the best, because if they were solid gold, then where have you got to go after that?
Yeah, we'd be like, what should we do now? Oh no,
we cracked it. We'll have better stop.
We've solved improv. Night. We give up. No. So I think what's happened is that maybe I speak for myself, but I've certainly worried less about tropes and things that I think I should be doing, and it's that we've done so many, and we've kind of done as much revision as possible, and now it sits in our subconscious, and that's a great place to be, because it's a bit like this is going to be a terrible analogy now, but it's like when you learn to drive. The first time I went out in the car by myself, I couldn't have the radio on. I was literally focused on everything. I wouldn't have been able to sing or do anything. I literally had to do the task in hand, and I feel that's what happens when you roll a show out initially with a new sort of structure or new kind of idea. And the more confident you get, the more you can turn the radio and start singing and hold the steering wheel with one hand and all that shit. So I feel like that's what's happening with us now. We're kind of like, cool, that stuff is bubbling away, so we can kind of put some icing on the cake and really go to town with some cool grisly deaths and some brilliant left field moves, like, I don't know, killing off a character that's really nice that everyone seems to be liking. Dead.
Yeah, you've moved from the conscious competence to unconscious competence.
Yep, I think so.
Cool.
And I think that's the same for like anyone trying anything new, whether it's however much improv you've done, however many of this and that you've done, or anything that you do in your life. You have to move from one to the other. I mean, we're only humans.
So within the Happily Never After structure, you have a call out, and the times I've seen the show, it's been the occupation of a grandparent.
Yes.
Is that always the call out, or is there...
Always the call out, yeah. We always ask for a real life profession of somebody's grandparent, because I think it would be so sad to do a fake one. I don't think we've got a fake one.
What, a fake?
A fake, someone shouting something out for the sake of it.
Right, okay.
It's just really lovely to hear some of the things that people's grandparents have done, some of the jobs that either don't exist anymore, or some very interesting things that... I mean, the last one we had was Artist's Model.
Yes.
Which was a dream. Like, we haven't had that before. And, we've had a lot of delightful ones in, like, carpenters and, like, trades that may have kind of slipped away or you don't necessarily see much of. Are great fun to do, because it makes it, whilst it's timeless, we don't seek to set it in any particular time. It's got an air of old-fashioned about it. I think it just has to. So that's why we went for that, and we can get such rich stuff from it.
I think old-fashioned is a really good way of describing it. And it's not quite fairy tale, but it's kind of, so it's sort of familiar because we're all sort of aware of what these jobs are. But it is, and we're connected to it. But it is at one remove, and it is the sort of the otherworldly or some sort of different thing. So it's accessible, but not of this world.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's a little bit like looking into a old scuffed mirror. It's like I see and recognise everything, but there's and I'm familiar with it, but there's a distance without a doubt. And that's the aim. That's the goal.
So in the show, what sort of roles are you drawn to playing?
Demonic children.
Demonic children.
Yeah, and I feel like I really need to break out of that.
Okay.
Every time we do a show, I'm like, I'm going to challenge myself and play, I don't know, not a demonic child.
So either a child that is not demonic or a demon that isn't a child. Either one would be progress.
Yes, I don't know. I really enjoy it. I don't know why. I think it's just because maybe it's because it's unexpected. Maybe because, there's a touch of like the Wednesdays and the Pugsleys about it that is just really fun. And the fact that kids can get away with so much and they can appear innocent in these tales and then turn out to be, I don't know, demonic, dreadful, ghostly, and it's just fun to play with. I've played some baddies, I've played what did I play? Oh, beautiful music. I played a former husband of one of the other characters who was vile. Right. That was a lot of fun to play. But it was one of those scenes where I wasn't entirely sure of what I was doing. Right. Okay. And the character ended up, he was so evil, he kind of eviled himself to death. Right. He kind of he was vile. I felt like in my mind he was like this kind of postulating, revolting. He was rich and unkind. Yeah. And I felt like he was kind of probably just dripping with hideous diseases. And in the end, he kind of burst open because he was so greedy, and I killed him off. But yeah, definitely drawn to kids or objects. I like playing children, objects. And
well, we'll come to the objects in a minute. I'd like to just explore how you would advise. Is advise the right word? If people wanted to play children from your perspective, how would you? What would your advice be?
Funny you should say that, because I ran a workshop on that. Because I really enjoy playing kids, and I draw a lot from when I was a child, the thoughts I had, and kind of the views of the world that I had, and the incredible intelligence. And children are so perceptive, and they're really deep, and they're really clever.
They just haven't got as much experience of the world as adults.
Yeah, and they think some really deep shit. They really do. If you do a cross-section of people and try and say, when you were a kid, what do you remember thinking that was kind of high concept? And most people have a thing, when I did my workshop, and now I can't remember any of them, it's just so annoying, but when I had my workshop, people were coming up with things right, left and centre and saying, I remember thinking this, or I remember thinking that, and everything had a real strong logic to it, and it was a real thoughtfulness. And I personally remember thinking, and I can carbon date it because I remember what room I was in, and our family moved house after I was the age of 4, so I was like, this is definitely 4 or under memory. But I remember looking in the mirror and going, in my head, only I will ever be able to see out of my eyes. And I couldn't believe it, and I just thought, I'm the only person who can do that, and that's weird, and what a shame, but also, just things like that, and then, I think the thing to bear in mind is the fact that, kids are high concept. They are not daft whatsoever. Yeah. They will be thinking about things and ruminating things that they'll never tell you about. they'll be scared of things that they'll never tell you about, like really kind of big world things.
Sorry to interrupt, but my fear growing up was that the Nazis would return, and that because I had the surname Moses, I would be, despite being quite Aryan in looks, that would go not well for me.
Did you tell anyone?
No.
No, there you go.
And I spoke to my, parents about it recently, and it's like, well, they didn't know I thought this.
I know, it's amazing what you choose not to bother saying as a kid. You're like, it's almost like you kind of, it's not like you're not being engaged with, or like, and people are paying you attention, but it's like you make a choice because, and again, you probably, you're very well rounded in terms of like your perception of how, what people might think of you if you say that, will you get into trouble and that kind of thing. And I remember being exceptionally frightened of all manner of things, in particular fire.
Which
when
is
I was
an
a kid.
Evolutionary wise, that's quite a good thing to be frightened of.
Yeah, but it was off the back of like, I would get terrified about things I watched on the news. I would get scared of things that had happened in our local area. The fire one came from an underground car park, caught fire, and I was just then worried about it for months. And I watched my nephew watching Stickman at Christmas time about 2 years ago. He's 4 now. And he was glued to the screen, but I could tell like his brain was going at a million miles an hour. And Stickman's really sad. It's a kid's cartoon, but it's really sad.
I've not read Stickman. My kids are 14 and 12, so we read a lot of those, the Gruffalo and Room on the Broom and all that sort of thing. But I think Stickman must have just come out when they were sort of growing out of them. But I can imagine.
Goodness, you have to watch it. It's it's all the emotions, and it's a stick. But my god. But after it he cried because he was sad for Stickman. And then my sister said that he'd also got really upset again about it at bedtime, and he's constantly thinking. And that's very long. I've answered your question in an exceptionally long-winded way, but that's literally only one thing to bear in mind. There's so many other things, like the fact that when kids argue, they will use any logic to prove what they've just said, and it's probably not real world, which is mighty enjoyable to use. The kind of tangential stuff they do as well, they go off on tangents, and I kind of feel like once you get in the same boat conversationally with a kid, you need to just not worry about tying ends up, because it's like this conversation is linear. We're not going to be going back to pick up the pieces, because now we're on to this next subject, and that's another lovely thing to play with as well. And just so there's so much rich stuff. It's not just walking on stage and going, "Hello, I'm a child." I mean, that would be nauseating and just.
I went through a phase of playing children when I started improvising, and part of it was handing over the power to the other person in the scene as to what was going to happen. No,
but you see, you have probably more power playing the child, I think.
Well, this is sort of what I've grown to learn, and I've tried to stop playing children because I played it too much as a default. But now, the last couple of times I've done it, I've played a child, but I've tried to play a high status child.
Brilliant.
Which is much more interesting and much more rich, and takes you to so many more interesting places.
Yeah, it's lovely. And I think also, drawing from your own memories is great. Drawing from any children that you know, nieces, nephews, your own kids, anything like that. Or little snippets of conversation that you sometimes hear.
Yeah.
Kid logic is just brilliant. It's so brilliant. I play a lot of demonic children. Right. And I've played some old ladies and some old dudes. And some animals. It's always delightful to play like a demon or a dog or just a plant or something.
Well, yes, and you're doing a workshop called Objects That Talk.
Yes.
This weekend in Birmingham.
I am. Saturday morning. Please come. Yes, that was born out of the fact that I do end up playing a lot of objects. It seems to be a fun pastime for me, and also I think Jenny Rowe, who's also in the Maydays, we enjoy it very much. And that is just great fun, because I just enjoy the fact that you can play like a chair, a table, a plant pot, a pair of shoes, and you can put some real human traits, characteristics and points of view on top of that. And it's just so funny, and you don't even have to reference what you are particularly. I mean, maybe once or a bit so that you communicate what you are, because there's no way I'm going to ever be able to look like a shoe. Maybe first thing in the morning, I don't know. Or a table, no matter how on point my object work. So, yeah, once you've got that out of the way, then it's lovely to just play with it, because there's just that lovely thing between you and the audience, and they know that you're something that shouldn't talk and you're talking. And I don't know why, it's just, I like to watch it as well. It's just very satisfying and very fun, and entertains the daft side of me. I do, and again, going back to childhood, I did put a lot of, I used to... Was it I'm going to say that wrong. Anthropomorphise. Yeah, I have a real trouble saying that.
Yes.
Everything. So, like, I had a plate that I got sad for because I took it to Brownies with a cake on, and Brown Owl never returned it. And it's one of those things I never told anyone about, but she never returned the plate. And I remember just feeling really sad for it, going, the plate will never come home. Poor plate. It's like everything I would project, like, human traits onto things, and...
I would do that as well, to the extent where I would, if I was walking along, I wouldn't kick a stone along the road, because it was then my friend, and then I had to leave it behind.
Oh, I thought because you wouldn't want to kick it.
Oh, yeah, well, I think the stone didn't mind. Yeah, I thought about that.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I had to really train myself out of that, because it just, your heart gets broken like 10 times a day, and it's just like, it's no way to live.
Exactly, and also you become a hoarder, I think, of things, because you put so much stock in things. There are photographs of me with, I'm not sure how many, not that many, because we didn't go through that many family cars, but the family car that we would then sell to get a new one, I wanted my photo taken with, because I got really sad that
this all makes perfect sense to me,
because the car was going, and I knew that we'd miss each other and it would miss us. And same with the piano. So there's like photos in albums of me like next to them, almost like kind of with a face of like slight disgruntlement and sadness, and kind of like, how are we letting it go? I mean, how's it going to get on in the world without us? So I think that's just something that stuck with me. When I play objects, I'm very like, objects have got feelings, of course they have. So we look at that in the workshop, and also like just giving objects like a worldview, so they can have a nice chat with another object, and see where they go from there. And sometimes it's quite fun, if it happens, to kind of play with puns around what the object is. I did that workshop, and Chris Mead dropped into it, and he played a radiator. And I think he was kind of temperamental, and I was like, oh, I see, hot and cold. You clever. I don't think that's not like a must, but it's fun. It's fun if you can find that button.
I think from an audience point of view, though, it's really refreshing to see something that aren't just people playing people. When you see people playing an object, it's like, oh, okay, so we can still be in the same world, but now I'm sort of seeing it from our whole new perspective and that sort of thing.
And I think also what's really nice is that as much as I desperately try and get away from stereotypes, and again gender stereotypes, of course, and I feel like with objects you distance yourself again. I don't, there's no gender to taps, there's no gender to chairs, tables. They just are. And I think that's lovely and refreshing, because it definitely I hope it frees people up to not sort of feel like they have to be a certain way, or play things they might usually play, or play things that other people endow them to play. I always kind of feel like it's a bit like you park your gender at the door, and you can just kind of talk. It's just nice. Which is nice, yeah.
So does it normally form as a kind of a comic relief, or is it possible to contribute to an ongoing narrative if you're an object?
I don't know. Comic relief, definitely. Maybe a kind of palate cleanser.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like how... and when I think of palate cleanser, I think, for some reason in my mind, it's like... in the young ones, they'd have their batshit crazy stuff going on, and then you'd zoom into two flies or to a frying pan having a chat, and it seemed to be the palate cleanse for like the next beat of what was going on.
I've not thought about that, but yeah.
So I think in terms of an improv show, it might be that you've had like some fast-paced plots and some stuff going on, and you can't go to the next level just yet because it's too soon. And so you can either have like a nice big group scene, or you could have like some objects. Talking. In fact, we did both. The last Mayday show, we had the Association of Royal Turds.
Yes.
Who did a nice song and dance number.
I think one of the Maydays on stage said something like, "Oh, yes, we are doing that then, are we?" Or there was something like that.
That's this show.
Yes.
That was Liz. I think they were magic turds actually, weren't they? So they were royal and magic.
Yes.
And turned out to not be that magic. But yeah, so that was both. That was a 2-in-1. Song and dance and palate cleanser.
It's weirdly, weird palate cleanser.
Very weird.
Very enjoyable show. If I mean, there's so much to enjoy in that show. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times now, but the bit where Jules Munns introduces John Kramer's character and says that John Kramer's character had his vocal cords cut, preventing him from speaking for the entire show.
Poor John. Mute. But he got a rhyming couplet in the poo song though.
He did, yes. That was the only time I think he got to speak.
Yeah,
was
he's
when he was a
fine
royal
with
poo. Royal magic poo.
He did a lot of good face acting.
I know, he was absolutely superb, and I didn't feel that we'd been shortchanged, but I was like, yeah. It felt that, because I saw saw Happily Never After at the Mayday Street Not Show Leela, and then I saw it last weekend. It felt that there was a little bit more relaxed last weekend. I mean, how much is you lot messing with John, or I mean, how much is it felt that we saw a little bit behind the scenes more that time than maybe the previous time I'd seen it?
I think it really depends. Like, sometimes we go on stage and we are in an absolutely stupid mood, and it will infuse what happens on stage. And I think with the one last time, we knew we were going to have such a short amount of time.
Yes.
It's actually very good discipline to keep everything simple. You always say, let's keep it simple, and you feel like it never happens. But we were like, we really made a mission to keep it as absolutely simple and clear cut as we possibly could. Not that many strands of narrative, try and like wrap it up, but also have the glitter on top. And we came off and were like, okay, we think we must now, probably it would be a good idea to apply that rationale to a 50-minute show, because even if we did that 20-minute show which had a good ending,
was it only 20 minutes?
Yeah, it was 20 minutes at the nursery. So if we did that show in a 50-minute show, I think that would, we all agreed that would be fine, because whilst that was the ending for that show, it would be the midpoint for another show.
Yeah.
And you could like develop or look at some other areas and still have like a nice juicy narrative. So I think that did us the world of good, because we've got very used to longer sets, especially in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And sharpens you up to keep it simple. And I think the fact that you have that in mind, and I think, I don't know, I think we were in a really silly mood as well. Like really, really daft. I
mean, both of them were hugely enjoyable, but it was just interesting seeing the difference between the two.
Yeah.
I mean, I should get out of the habit of recounting improv scenes because if you were there, it was amazing, and if you weren't there, you were sort of going, "What's going on?" But
It's like someone describing their dream to you.
it's
and you're
exactly
like,
like that.
"Oh, what?"
But in the one you did at the May Days retreat, where you played the nephew who could control fish.
Yep, standard.
I think that's one of my favourite things that I've seen in improv. And the way everyone else leaped in, and I can't do it because it's an audio format, but they sort of mined the fish, and there was this one point where it was all kind of rhythmic fish. I was sort of clapping my hands and tapping stuff, and then the fish at one point came up to come through the door. I forgot what the hole in the door is. So it's the thing you put letters through.
Oh, letterbox.
Yeah, letterbox, going through the letterbox. And they came round the other side, and it was just amazing. It was really, really good fun.
I really enjoyed watching that because I didn't do it because I was I was controlling them being the fish. Yeah. So I didn't do any kind of the hand slapping stuff. But it was really nice to watch. I was like, hey, this is great. Thanks, guys. This is perfect. And it's nice to kind of add another kind of slightly musical element in that is just. That's not singing or keys. It's fab when that happens. Doesn't happen that much. Should happen more.
Yes, no, I like that very much, and I would like to have fish more. I mean, before I saw that show, I hadn't realised that I would think that, but I would like to see more fish in more improv shows. Yeah.
Fish in improv.
fish
cool.
Improv.
We'll look into that.
So you're also involved in sitting in a tin can.
Yes.
Mr. Jules Munns.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
We haven't done one for ages.
You've got some more dates coming up.
We do. I'm so happy because we did it for a while when the nursery was over at the other theatre. We did a bunch, and it's just such fun because it's very low stakes. It's chatty. We based it on a two-man group from the States that do Improv, where they just go fishing and they just talk.
Fishing improv, you see.
There you go.
It's a bigger thing than I realised.
And we just wanted to do like a two-person thing where you just kind of shoot the shit. But that wasn't the origin of it. I think we both have an obsession with space.
Right.
A real fascination with space and astronauts and that kind of world. And it seemed like a really nice way to put together what would be quite a high stakes dramatic career, being an astronaut, against just chatting about Tesco's and just something very banal. And we thought that if you have been to space a bunch, you probably don't talk about anything particularly technical. You probably do talk about, you go up there and you chat about how you dislike the fact that your local Sainsbury's has rearranged where the cheese is or something. I think that was just a real nice kind of. We were just like, yes, we like those two things. They're good. And then it kind of went out from there. I was like, I think Jules was like, let's get spacesuits. So we got white painting. What do you call them? They're not jumpsuits. What are they called? Boiler suits.
Oh, right, yeah.
White boiler suits that painters and decorators wear. We've got NASA badges that we haven't put on yet, which we really need to. And the audio at the beginning is the T minus in the dark. And then we hear like the noise of the takeoff and literally just that moment in the darkness hearing the T minus, like I genuinely have a combination of feelings, like one, that it's Christmas Eve, two, that I'm genuinely going into space. It's just so exciting. I'm so childish. Childlike, yes. But I just really enjoy it, and then I just like the fact that we talk about nothing much, and we kind of devised ourselves not a framework, but kind of some things that we can, because having a conversation is the most natural thing in the world, but we didn't want it to ever be dull. So we came up with some kind of warm-ups and ways that we can kind of get into more interesting areas and topics of conversation.
Can you give me an example?
Yes. So, for example, one of our warm-ups is we'll do why is something like something else, and we'll make sure that both of them are like poles apart. So we might say, why is a flamingo like paper? Or why is Christmas like a toadstool, and you have to use. It's a bit like the game Defence Lawyer. You have to use real world logic to connect the two in a kind of hippie-ish sort of way. So what did I say? Why is a flamingo like paper? Because they both are feather light when thrown through the air. That's terrible. I promise they're better than that. But we'll throw in one of those, and we'll also do like some other little techniques and things. So
you'll use them when you're rehearsing or in the actual show?
Sometimes we'll use them in the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't need to. This is the thing, when you get into a little kind of avenue of conversation that kind of takes off, and you're both like challenging each other and going, wait, what did you just say? And having a lot of fun with it. You don't necessarily need to, but then there are days where you feel like you need that little extra push.
Yes. So do you ask for a suggestion from the audience?
We don't, we don't. We just turn the lights out and make them come to space with us.
I think that's reasonable. That's a fun place that we all want to go. That sounds good.
But we're doing some dates at the nursery coming up soon, and I can't remember when they are, which is terrible.
Well, it's all right, because you can check. Because we have the internet these days. Yes, people can look it up. They don't need to write in with a self-addressed stamped envelope. Stamped addressed envelope is what I meant to say, never mind. We'll send them a newsletter. They can look it up on the internet. And they'll be fine.
Definitely playing at the nursery. A couple of dates between now and Christmas. That sounds more professional than I've forgotten.
I'm an artiste. Don't bother me with the day-to-day.
Oh no, I need to know where I need to be and when. So I definitely show up. But that's really exciting. We're getting back into that. We've got a playlist and everything. We're multimedia. We're really enjoying it. It's loads of fun.
You're also a member of the Dreamweaver Quartet.
Yes.
That's new and exciting, isn't it?
It is brand new and exciting. It's sort of the brainchild of James Witt and myself, but primarily James. We just had a real want to do something that would be sonically very pleasing. Lots and lots of rich harmonies, kind of transport people on a beautiful sonic musical journey. We get audiences' dreams.
Yes.
And we do a show based on that. We have them sort of as the protagonist within it. We'll do that, but such is the nature of dreams that they are very strange.
Yes.
And they'll go off into lots of different areas. So it's clearly not a narrative show. And the focus is probably on soundscape, the sound.
You've got a harp playing?
We hope that we've got a harp for a couple of shows, not for all of them. So definitely focusing on like pretty sounds and making it kind of, I guess, like hitting the heart zone and the head zone, but the heart zone more. Kind of make people feel.
So how do you rehearse that?
Well, we're just kind of playing around with ways to open the show, and we want to have some grounded scenes within it. You can't just have a show that's entirely a dreamscape, because there's nothing to anchor it in reality. As humans, we definitely need those points. And when we dream, we also have incredibly normal settings and scenarios and conversations sometimes in dreams. I've had some very dull dreams. Most of my dreams are terrifying, so I appreciate the dull ones, where you have just a conversation with somebody, and so we need to remember that that's also in play. So it's kind of looking at all the different aspects and knowing that we can go surreal and weird and sonic and strange and do some lovely edits and different things like that. So we've been looking at those, but also knowing that we can play some grounded topics, chatting scenes, just to kind of like drop an anchor every so often.
Yes. So you're talking about sonic soundscapes. How are they being generated?
Whoever's on keys or harp or whatever we have on the night, and our voices.
Lovely. So it's not traditional song structures, or it
will be songs. Yeah, it probably will be songs. I would say not particular. I wouldn't say they'd be like classic verse, chorus, musical kind of numbers. We're trying to sort of steer away from that. If we find nice phrases that we can come back to, then we'll do that if we remember them. But it's kind of looking at lovely sounding phrases, lovely kind of is ambient the right word? Just kind of nice, kind of sounding things, like pleasing. So not kind of a dystopian like
right.
But please.
Is that what a dystopia sounds like?
Dystopian. Just making it sound pretty, but not being married to any particular structure, but also trying to be a bit clever about it and not having it go wayward. I think we did a sort of a very, very kind of beginning embryonic sort of version of it with just 3 of us before Edinburgh, over at the Miller, and that was very fun.
Yeah,
and we kind of a lot of things were born out of that we want to do again.
Yeah,
like the way we're going to open it, and and it's just very interesting to hear people's dreams. The chap who gave us his dream that night was a really great dream. It was he said he had a recurring dream where he was on the tube, but he was on the canals in Venice, but he knew he was on the tube.
Oh.
And everywhere he went, he ended up in the same place. So it's kind of like a looping thing. I think in future we'd love to play with like people who can do loop pedals, like interesting kind of stuff like that. So yeah, a bit different.
Yeah. So I'm interested in the sort of the waywardness sort of aspect of it, because if you're doing a dream and you're applying dream logic, then essentially there isn't really any logic. How much responsibility for sense, in inverted commas, are the performers responsible for that, or are the audience going to make up their own minds what it all means? It's a hard question, I realise.
Yeah, I think that's our job. I think when you watch something, you will always fill in the gaps in a way that's unique to you.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely great. But I think it's on us to keep it from going really wayward. Like, we can have those moments that are very surreal or very like strange and otherworldly, and do some funky edits in that regard. But like before, I think we definitely need like some standalone scenes that are as normal as possible to kind of keep it anchored. And we're looking at returning to themes, so returning to musical themes and returning to themes that we did at the beginning, just to kind of keep a sense of connection. So it doesn't go linear like a conversation with a child. So that it definitely has some kind of conclusion. Because again, as human beings, we have this thing in us, don't we, that we like repetition, we like things, we like the rule of 3. We like seeing things being brought back, so we'll be doing reincorporation and stuff like that. So I just think it's like nothing any of us have done before, and we're all like super excited about it, and just bloody love a good sing. And I love it when a good harmony emerges. And we all kind of know where we are on I call it the harmony ladder, which I think would make a real musician weep.
Where are you on the harmony ladder?
I'm kind of here, I'm kind of like high up but not too high.
Right.
And then someone else will be a little bit below, and then someone else will be a little bit above, and all together we create a beautiful harmony. Says the girl who didn't do music theory and gave up the violin because she had to do music theory and it was like maths.
It's hard.
So
you mentioned a few times sort of the chatty side of things.
Yeah.
That seems to be something that's quite important to you in improvisation.
Yeah, and originally it wasn't. Originally it terrified me, and I would have run as far away from it as possible. Probably as little as 5-6 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I just
So what would you do before?
And I still love this, but solid character stuff.
Right.
And I still absolutely adore character work. I love characters, and I love absurdity, and I love surrealist stuff, and I love dumb stuff, and so I still obviously do that, and I love it to my core. But I kind of got to grips with the other stuff more, and it's really interesting to go from really disliking something to actually really liking it, and then realising how much those worlds matter to each other. Like, for example, Objects That Talk is like chatty and character literally colliding. You cannot have one without the other. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like my absolute favourite thing in the world with my new favourite thing in the world that used to scare me. Brilliant. Because I freaked out when I did monologues. I used to hate monologues. I think it's because you find a way of presenting yourself as you, and I hadn't found that, and I felt like me as me was boring, possibly unbearable, uncomfortable for me. Definitely, I just hid behind characters very much. And when I went to do the IO 5-week intensive in 2012, we did monologues. I did monologues for the first time. I could barely get through one without kind of coming to a kind of very beetroot red face sort of like haltering stop when I felt like I'd said too much. It's like, shit, it's too personal. No. And then like, no, carry on, it's meant to be personal. But I couldn't. You get more comfortable in your own skin, I think is what I'm saying. And there's a number of things that also have helped with that, like doing a solo show. Right. It's just you. You have to front it. You have to... Any bits that you do in between where you're just talking as you have to find your version of stage you, which sounds so wanky.
No. That's very much the stock and trade of this podcast. Finding the stage you is very much what we're interested in discovering. Yeah.
And so I gradually got better at that kind of stuff, to the point where I thought, well, I'm very interested in teaching it. I was interested in teaching monologues, and still am, and have done a bit. Interested in teaching chatty scenes, which I've done a lot of as well. And then Objects That Talk, which combines both, because I think if you've struggled with something yourself, you can really help other people who don't find it easy, because you can say, look, I've been there.
Yes.
I understand exactly how you feel, but I promise you I can give you these 6 tools that you can go away and use or practice, and it will start to feel better. And as soon as it starts to feel better, you'll literally feel like magic. So, yeah.
So I don't mean to have to give away all 6, but I mean, how did you find a way of presenting yourself?
Gosh, how did I? Lots of practice. Being given a sort of structure for monologues in my head, and then kind of adapting it to my own needs.
So what sort of structure would this be?
So what I tend to find is most useful for me and what I teach out, and I can't actually remember where I learnt this now, so I feel guilty because I can't credit the whoever helped me out.
Well, do write into the Improv London podcast via BBC TV London.
Yeah, if this was you, it's probably a combination of like Chicago and then joining the Maydays back in 2000 and when was it? 11. Combination of those two things and like soaking up wise words from other Maydays and teachers across the pond. And it's basically, you've got your little anecdotal story. That's fine. Doesn't have to be funny or clever. That's fine. And then just thinking, what does that say about you? Like, why do you think that? Why did you do that? Or why did you think you did that? If it's past tense.
So it's not only it's taking that next step from this thing happened to me, but then it's drawing the conclusions. So I did this, and I did this because I think this about something larger. Is that?
Yeah, so I think I did a monologue once about how someone had gone through our bins out the front of my house. And it freaked me out because I came home to this guy doing it, and I had a bit of a heart attack. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is trespassing, and also this is random dude in my yard, and I don't know what to do, and I feel a bit threatened, and I got a bit obsessed about the bins ever after. I kept looking out at them going, is he going to come back? I became bin lady. I was like, where are my bins? There they are. Anyone there? No. So I told that story, and I said, I guess what this says about me is that maybe I'm a bit obsessive, I don't know, or maybe I get kind of paranoid about stuff. But lately, and I'd got paranoid to the point where I jumped at my own shadow. Oh, no. At one point in my own house.
Oh dear.
And I guess, it says, what does that say about you? Maybe I'm oversensitive. And then what does it say about society? It is the outer shell of all of that, which is also a really great thing to apply to character dream songs as well, like all of that kind of stuff. What's your want? What does it say about you? And how does this affect the wider world? Yeah. It's just kind of feels like it hits a lot of areas of improv, it's kind of a good tool for lots of things. Lots of things that you're doing by yourself.
Yes.
I guess you're doing the work of someone else who'd say to you, why do you think that?
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself.
So yeah, you mentioned your solo show, the most recent one being Office Meltdown.
Yeah.
So I'd just be interested to know why you wanted to do a solo show, and how was the process of creating that different from preparing for an improv show?
So I wanted to do one because I really enjoy doing characters, and I had a lot of ideas and a lot of things that I wanted to do, but I didn't feel like I could do it. And then as soon as you say that to anyone who knows you, they're like, you should do it. And then you think, well, if more than 3 people have told me to do it, I should probably do it now. And also I thought, I don't want to wake up dead having not done it. Because really, what even matters in this world? I mean, who cares about anything? It's like, might as well just give it a go. So the first show I did was Doors to Manual, and that was quite an easy-ish process because it was based on my fear of flying and how I sort of got around that, and my fascination with aeroplanes and airliners. And then I set my characters on a plane, which was not nice and easy. But I learned that when you do a solo show, you have, and this is probably anyone who's done it a lot is probably like, yeah, of course, but I had no idea. But you just get help from lots of people, so it's not just you. Like initially, I sat down and for a couple of hours in the Barbican with Dave Waller, who used to do a bunch of improv. And because he'd done a solo show, and just picked his brain, had got his ideas, and he helped me with the editing of stuff because it gets really hard to edit your own work a lot of the time. I didn't know how to get from one character to the other, how I wanted it to look, so I got Lewis Harrison Barker to help me with that. I got Sue Harrison to help me with the characters because I thought maybe they're 2D and I don't know, and so she hotspotted them and we did a whole afternoon on that.
When you say she hotspotted them?
Yeah, so she does a brilliant thing where she'll just sit you down as a character like you're in a job interview, and she'll just talk to you, and it brings out some really funny stuff. We were both laughing a lot because she's a genius, and it really helps with thinking of like other things that your character could say or do, and then you can even nick a couple of the decent.
I don't know how much of the background noise.
Got my ears being drawn. I'm like, what's going on?
I'm rarely in the nursery training centre on a Monday night because normally I'm teaching. So it sounds like everyone has a lot of fun.
It gets fruity on a Monday.
Book your room at the nursery training centre on Mondays. It's fruity night.
There's a lot of people who help you out, and then your tech comes and helps you out with your tech. Yeah. So you're not even by yourself on the day. But only you can pull it off, so only you can kind of get up there and do it. And every time I did it, and every time I did Office Meltdown, which was the second solo show, I felt really sick and like I was faking it. Oh, no. Which I think is normal. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a case of having a lot of ideas and thinking, oh, do you know what? I'd quite like to like release the noise in my head because I think it might be quite funny. It might be quite interesting, and it's always nice when people can relate to things that you do as well. Like with any luck, it can be cathartic for you and for your audience, as well as just being downright silly. I just really enjoy thoroughly silly, surreal, stupid stuff because. We can't make sense of this universe. There's we haven't got a chance. So we might as well enjoy some utter batshit silly, stupid stuff. I genuinely don't think there are parts of my brain and the things that I find amusing that just have not moved on, or maybe that since I was a kid, I've always enjoyed like crazy sounding names, puerile toilet humour. Bonkers faces, and one of my absolute heroes is Kristen Wiig because she just does the best faces. She barely needs to say anything and I'm in bits laughing. So it's that kind of thing. It's like thinking, oh, can you empathise with this? I want to like sort of do that, but I also want to make you laugh and I also want to make you think, and change your life. No, that's impossible. Yeah, it's fun, and it's a good thing to do for yourself, to just know you can do it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do anything with it. Yeah, it's fun.
Cool. Excellent. Well, that sounds like a recommendation to me. So, last couple of questions. When you're performing, do you like to give people gifts, or do you like to mess with them?
Oh man, I think sometimes they're the same thing. I think there are some improvisers who have that kind of, that I know well and play with a lot, that have a glint in their eye that the best gift you can give them is messing with them. That they're really up for it. So I think both. I think it's really lovely to give someone a gift. I think if you, things that they like to do, or if you haven't seen their character for a while and you feel like you want to bring them back, so you'd be like, I could say a thing that could potentially, I mean it might not, because anything goes in improv, make them central to the storyline. Great. But messing with each other is so enjoyable as well. It's almost like it's like having a bit of a party on stage, which, you know, you don't want to cross the line into self-indulgent. You want to bring everyone with you. You don't want it to look anything. Don't want it to look like an in-joke. That's like awful. So that you have to always watch that. But I think it's utterly enjoyable to mess with each other, and I enjoy it when my teammates like mess with me, because we know the things that we can mess each other up with, and we know the things that we could never do, and there are things that I would never do or never get people to do in shows, because they're just like, oh, I don't like that, or I can't think of anything at the moment, but like it's a lot of fun, and you can see the look on their faces. We're almost waiting for to be kind of pushed into like an awkward task or something within a show, and it's an absolute delight, because you can almost sense the tension before the high wire act begins within the high wire act. And that's a whole lot of fun. That's a treat. Both are a treat. I like them both.
So final question. So if somebody, if someone were to perform with you, how could they delight you?
Oh my gosh, they could just make me be like a clock, or a pillowcase, or a demonic child, or that would be utterly delightful for me. I know that Jules and I have often said when we do Tin Can, even though we're playing as close to ourselves as possible, he often says that he's like, our show's basically you saying weird shit and me trying to work out what the hell you said. And I'm like, oh no, and he's like, no, I really like it. I mean that's not always the case. Like we've definitely had like points where he said something and I've said, what, mate? What's that? Tell me that again. What do you mean by that? Having leave to be surreal, and having leave to go off on a tangent is always a delight for me.
I made this.
That's improv!